This week on Movies, baby, we saw Bong Joon-ho's follow-up to Parasite, Mickey 17, starring Robert Pattinson, and we saw Paul W.S. Anderson's latest with Mila Jovovich and Dave Bautista in The Lost Lands. We're going to tell you what we thought of those movies, but first, a quick spoilers disclaimer for all you plot heads out there, and we love our plot heads, at least I do. We're going to review this week's new releases, and while we do try to avoid any major plot spoilers in our reviews, it's impossible to give an honest review of these stinking movies without talking about them in their entirety. And so if we are reviewing a movie that you don't want spoiled, not even in the least, we recommend caution. Put us on mute, fast forward, whatever you need to do. We put the time codes down in the description so you know when we're talking about what, when. That's your disclaimer, so you can't say we spoiled anything for you. Are you happy now? I hope so. Let's talk about Mickey 17. This is Bong Joon-ho's first movie since Parasite. It's based on the 2022 novel Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. And the film stars, like I said, Robert Pattinson, also Naomi Ackie, Stephen Yeun, Toni Collette, Mark Ruffalo. It is set in the future, and the plot follows a man who joins a space colony as a quote-unquote expendable. Not those expendables. This is a different kind of expendable. A disposable worker who gets cloned every time he dies for research purposes. Joe, what'd you think of Bong Joon-ho's new movie, Mickey 17?
Brett, a new Bong was in the theater, and I was hyped. We love Bong. Yes, of course, we love Parasite, but Bong's made other great movies, too. We love Snowpiercer. We love Memories of a Murder. We love Bong. So I was very excited for Mickey 17. His English language movies versus Korean movies certainly has a small little line down them. Just to throw it out there, just to say it, he makes all of his Korean movies seem to be as great as movies can be. He's made 2 English features, Snowpiercer and Okja, before he worked with Warner Brothers on this and Robert Pattinson on Mickey 17. And those movies, one with Netflix, Okja, they were good, but they weren't as beloved as some of the other ones. So here we have his third English language feature. He's doing sci-fi again, which he's done admirably in Snowpiercer. The Host has elements of sci-fi. He is with some aliens here, some creatures, a la Okja, a la The Host. Mm-hmm. He's good at that. He has that comic edge that Bong does. Specifically, it might remind you of the tone of Okja. Again, it has that sort of like heightened silliness to pair with sort of the sci-fi messaging, because Bong's always trying to give you some medicine. And one thing about Bong throughout the whole filmography, which we watched this week, is Bong is a guy who's going to give you your medicine about the ills of modern society, the ills of capitalism, the ills of, labor, and
economic inequality,
and poverty, and unfairness, and he's always going to do that. And sometimes he does it with like incredible depth and richness, and sometimes he does it to like astounding results, like in Parasite, where you're sort of shocked, sort of a shock to the system, like a piece of art that can still kind of shock the system. But unfortunately, Mickey 17 doesn't have that depth. That's going to be like sort of where I start my review. Mickey 17 has the Bong interests. It has some aliens. It has some big time obvious anti-capitalism stuff. It has some, unfortunately, too obvious Trump parallels. Mark Ruffalo's character is like a Trump, and his fans wear red hats. It's a little broad and it's a little undeep. Sometimes there's some joy in that. For the first half of the film, seeing a foreign auteur do sort of like a broad, backhanded slap to America, he does it with a sort of like a smile on his face, and it has elements of sort of a bounciness or a fun. But as it plods along, it just sort of reveals itself to be ultimately a little too broad to be interesting. Mickey 17 explores a lot of very interesting themes, Brett, though. I love the Pattinson getting printed out. I love his love interest in this movie. She was excellent, Naomi Ackie. I thought she was excellent. There's in Act 2, spoiler alert, there are 2 Mickeys that are printed out, and all of a sudden there's 2 Mickeys and 2 love interests. And for 1 minute there, I thought we were going to have a great last hour of the movie exploring all of the fun that you can have with 2 people having sex with one person that's 2 bodies.
Because also you get like the other Mickey is like a bad boy, so you get this sort of like sort of sweet, awkward Robert Pattinson doing a Steve-O voice, and then you get this like badass sort of angry Robert Pattinson. So there was so much you felt this potential for a lot of interplay there.
So
but
I was
saying it
so
didn't really
excited
pay
for
off.
all of these themes have been established, and I was really into it for the first 2/3 of the movie. In Act 3, Bong takes a detour and he decides to explore things that I wasn't interested in, and he goes down a path for some sort of big Hollywood IMAX special effect ridden climax with snow and aliens and a bomb, and I would have been just happy staying on that ship, staying in that bedroom, letting Pattinson play opposite Pattinson, and finding the other interesting themes about Mickey's life just in the film. That being said, Bong goes and does a big snow alien thing. I will say this, Brett, my favorite thing about the movie was the visual effects. These aliens look incredible. The artists that Bong worked with and the empowerment that Bong allowed them created. I was watching the movie like, oh, this is what special effects can do nowadays. I was like, oh, wait, never mind. All this technology actually is super useful. Can somebody please let the artists do their thing? Because when they do it, the results are breathtaking. Just because I didn't love the themes of the third act, whatever, doesn't mean I wasn't blown away by how breathtaking the special effects were. But do you know who I blame the most for the failures here? I blame the editor. The editor unpaces this movie. Now, Bong had Final Cut. I looked it up. I said, who's the blame? Am I going to blame Warner Brothers? No, I'm going to blame Bong. Bong, you stood too long in the editing room and you overthought it, and it just pacing-wise, it wasn't satisfactorily told story-wise. The cutting back and forth didn't make sense. Sometimes plot points were dropped wholesale. There was too much if you had Final Cut, then ignore the studio, because it was like you had Final Cut but you took a lot of their notes. So now we are in this like hodgepodge. Release the Warner Brothers cut. Release
the Warner Brothers
release the studio cut. I want to see what the execs wanted to put out there. Bong, get out of the way. I want to see what like the middle management, like I want to see them. They took out 20 minutes and now it's like an hour and 50. I want to see that cut of Mickey 17.
He wants to see Chip Zaslav's cut.
I do.
David Zaslav's Fail Son's cut.
I need to see the Chip cut because Bong's sensibilities weren't 1,000% bullseye like I'm used to with this guy.
Yeah. I agree with you, Joe. I do think that Mickey 17 ultimately is proof that Bong he's incapable of making a bad movie, because this is a little bit of a spoiler alert for the second half of our show when we're going to rank Bongs, but I thought Mickey 17 was the worst movie he's made, and I thought it was still good. I thought it was still pretty good. Bong, like Joe said, I agree. He uses every cent of that big budget. It's all up there on the screen. The movie looks amazing. It has that sort of just transcendent sci-fi production design they don't really see anymore, and I thought like maybe like besides Guillermo del Toro, Bong is like the only guy between Snowpiercer and this. Bong is one of the only guys that's doing like old school sci-fi world building that you would used to see in movies like Blade Runner, The Matrix, whatever. There's 100 examples, but where you would go to a sci-fi movie and there was just this fully realized,
it's like
executed
George
world.
Miller, Steven Spielberg,
Miller,
and Bong Joon-ho.
too. Thank you. Exactly.
Christopher Nolan.
Yes,
he's in that class of director.
Absolutely, where it's just this perfectly realized world. Every detail is perfect. I also love, one of my favorite things about Bong is, like you said, the way he weaves humor into things in these like little nuanced, specific, detailed ways. So I love that, like, as advanced as the technology gets in his sci-fi movies, he always makes sure to like keep the technology kind of bad at the same time, because the thing that sci-fi movies always forget is, like, yes, it will get more advanced on the surface, but it's still technology, so it's always going to be breaking. And I love that in Bong sci-fi movies, the technology is like advanced but still sort of shitty. So like the way that like the human printer sort of like almost goes like a dot matrix printer, the way it sort of is like and then it kind of like fucks up, and like that is so funny. That's what Bong really brings to these worlds. I also love that you're always going to get like someone falling down stairs. You're always going to get like these hilarious pratfalls in the middle of like big action sequences. I just love the way Bong throws in these little comedic details. I do have to say though, Joe, I got to call somebody out. And this is sort of an intervention. This is like a Willem Dafoe style intervention here, because Mark Ruffalo, I love Mark Ruffalo. He's a great actor. You don't need to tell me that. He's I think he's great in Spotlight. The Kids Are All Right. You Can Count on Me. Zodiac, Eternal Sunshine. The list goes on and on. One of our great actors. I do think between Poor Things and Mickey 17, I think Ruffalo is getting a little hacky, and it bothers me,
Brett?
and it worries me, and somebody needs to say something, and apparently the people around him are not telling him this, so I'm going to tell you, Marky baby, you're getting a little hacky, and I'm going to tell you specifically why you're getting a little hacky, because you're leaning into these like high satirical cartoon character roles between Poor Things and between your sort of on again off again Trump impression in this movie. You're leaning into these like high satire cartoon characters, and I love you, but you're not funny like that. You can be like, I've seen Ruffalo be funny in movies, but he's funny because he's giving a committed Mark Ruffalo performance, and the movie makes him funny in the way it structures the performance. But Mark is like having to bring too much of the comedy to these last two performances, and you're just not funny like that.
No.
You're a sweet, feckless liberal. I don't know what to say. You're not funny like that, and that's fine. Not everyone has to do everything, but this is not your strong suit. I don't want to see Mark Ruffalo continue to do these hard satirical caricatures. It is just not working. Like I liked this Mark Ruffalo character for about 2 minutes, and then the bit wore off, and then it was so tired, and it was Mark flailing for a Trump impression for 2 hours. Toni Collette is
funny.
Great and hilarious.
Toni Collette cracked me up. Sorry, haters.
Yes, Toni Collette's amazing. Because people hate Toni Collette.
Oh, I don't know. In some reviews I was reading, she got lumped in with the Ruffalo.
No.
I disagree.
Doing her best to save the Ruffalo performance by giving him something to work off of that's human and relatable and a performance.
And she's really funny.
And he thinks he is just lampooning Trump, and he's taking down the big man. They won the popular vote, dumbass.
It's so brutal.
There's not what do you think you're doing with this big this is nothing. Nothing's happening.
I think this speaks to Bong not being from here. It's like if he was from here and was ingesting the American media every single day, he would kind of know that no, you can't cast Ruffalo as the Trump because it's too on the nose. Because in South, I know that he's an anti-Trump figure, but to us here in America, that's cringe kind of that he would then do this Trump thing. There's this little tiny lost in translation cultural flutters where it's that's just not quite it, Bong.
There's some lost in translation cringe where the satire is not as sharp as it could be,
right.
And it's a little too on the nose for what we're used to from Bong. And Ruffalo is the centerpiece of that. And honestly, I blame Ruffalo.
I hate Ruffalo.
I blame Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo's been good in one movie, Foxcatcher.
Wrong. He's a great actor with a great portfolio of work. All the movies I named, fucking Spotlight, he's amazing. You Can Count on Me. The first thing I remember seeing him in, he's fantastic. Zodiac? You don't like him in Zodiac?
Of course I do.
He does. Joe likes him.
Of course I do.
He's just really mad about this career turn, and I'm mad about it too because it's not who you are, Ruffalo.
I hated you in Poor Things, and I hated you in fucking Mix 17.
This is a
Stop
bad
ruining
back-to-back.
movies.
And we're getting ahead of this, okay? There's still time to turn the tide around here.
You're being
I
nice.
think I know what you're doing. You're flailing around post Avengers. You're trying to find something
post Bernie
new to just keep the old flame burning inside of you. I don't know what's happening, but find a role that you're meant for next time. Let's talk about In the Lost Lands. This is Paul W.S. Anderson's new movie. Paul W.S. Anderson, of course, the one of our last B-movie directors, at least B-movie directors working in wide release.
That gets theatrical
distribution. He made the original Mortal Kombat, Event Horizon, and then the entire Resident Evil franchise with his wife and now frequent collaborator Mila Jovovich, who is also in The Lost Lands alongside Dave Bautista. And this is based on a George R.R. Martin short story. It is about a witch and a hunter who journey into a dangerous landscape to find an artifact for a queen. Joe, what'd you think of Paul W.S. Anderson's In the Lost Lands?
In the Lost Lands is a mashup, I swear to God, of Mad Max, Fury Road, Furiosa, plus Lord of the Rings, plus Game of Thrones. It's all of those things. It has Daenerys stuff. It has all the Lord of the Rings beats of the walking to kill the ring. It has the whole thing just looks like, Gasland and Furiosa, classic B-movie stuff. He's taking all the popular things that everybody enjoyed that made $1 trillion, and now he's going to make a mashup B-movie thing where if you were on drugs and you were like in a nursing home and you could barely distinguish who was coming in and out of your room, you might think for a second that you were watching like Furiosa, but actually it's just in the Lost Lands. So that's sort of the vibe. The aesthetic is still his garish high beam movie. Like he's like his movies all like he just points like car lights in your face and then the actors stand in front of them. That's like all of his movies. And the graphics are so crunchy, like they're like ancient graphics from a computer that they don't make anymore, and everything looks like steampunk 2004 music video kind of bullshit. I kind of liked it.
You liked it.
I kind of liked it.
I knew you liked it. I felt an undercurrent to that whole
like it. I like it. Mila Jovovich plays someone called like the Bad Witch, the White Witch. What's her name? Evil Witch.
Yeah, it's
the Gray Witch.
Everything is like a dark fantasy like placeholder, and then they forgot to go in and write the specific name for things.
She plays the Gray
there
Witch.
There she is.
And then Dave Bautista plays like the Hunter.
Yeah.
And and then there's like a king, and they have to go on a journey to find a werewolf. And I really. This movie's not very good, but I really kind of had a good time watching it. You're going to hear from a lot of people. Brett is going to speak for many of them that are out on this movie. People that went to go see a P.W.S. Anderson film, and then they saw In the Lost Lands, which was giving me P.W.S. Anderson, but then they come out and say, that's not what I wanted. So I'm going to actually turn the tables over to you, Brett, now and ask you, what did you think of this film? Because you love a P.W.S. Anderson. You're a champion of the B film.
I do.
But you came out of the movie theater not quite as buoyant as I
always
did.
root for Paul W.S. Anderson. To me he's Roger Corman for people who grew up listening to Korn and nu metal. He is one of our last true B movie directors working in wide release, like we said. But it's as simple as this, Joe. This just isn't a good movie, even by his standards.
Well, why not?
It ain't it. The whole thing is ugly. He has been an important there's been an important distinction between a Paul W.S. Anderson movie and an Uwe Boll movie. They are both two sort of B-movie, straight-to-video directors, whatever you want to call them. But Uwe Boll is always this sort of cynical troll who's making movies because of a tax loophole that he can exploit, and the movies are always sort of trollish and sort of intentionally bad. Paul W.S. Anderson is usually working right at that Roger Corman level of B-movies, but they look as about as good as you can make a movie look on the budget that they have, and they're just fun and exciting and interesting. This movie ultimately just looks so bad, and all of the specifics are so sort of generic. And look, I love someone trying to make a dark fantasy movie in 2025. I love someone doing this sword and sorcery steampunk thing in 2025. I love everything this movie is trying to do. I just hate the execution of it. It's ugly and stupid by Paul W.S. Anderson standards. You can do better than this, baby. Get him next time, though. I'm rooting for you. Let's really quickly, Joe, because we're on the clock here. Let's do our reviews, because we didn't do our ratings. We didn't do ratings for these two movies. And Mickey 17, the rating is important because you have this on your fantasy.
That's exactly right.
You drafted this on your fantasy
so it does
team.
matter.
Yes. And the fantasy draft, of course, is where Joe and I pick 5 movies plus an alternate from 2025 that we think we're both really going to like, and whoever gets the highest ratings collectively at the end wins. I'm going to give Mickey 17 3 stars because I thought it was a good movie.
Mickey 17 was good. I'm going to give it 3 stars as well.
Good. So that's a 6 for you for Mickey 17.
That's a 6.
Kind of a lukewarm start, considering how
not what I wanted.
Okay.
Not what I wanted at all.
I like the risk, though.
with that.
I like the risk. I will always take a risk on Bong.
Why not?
Yes. Now, what about In the Lost Lands, Joe? What do you give In the Lost Lands?
In the Lost Lands was all right. I'm giving it 2.5 stars.
2.5 stars.
I like this movie. It isn't good. That's why it's not 3. But it has more fun. And it was a better watch than y'all are making it out to be. I stan it. I'm giving it 2.5 stars.
I love that for you. This also puts you in the running to get in the VOD release trailer, because I think you're the only person who gave it a good review. So if you're listening out there, Paul W.S. Anderson or
I liked
the
it.
team,
I don't understand why
this is your only good
I
review.
don't understand why
this.
people if you're a fan of P.W.S. Anderson, I'm pretty sure you're going to like In the Lost Lands, and I'm confused as to why you
I disagree. If you like Paul W.S. Anderson, this is below his standards.
I'm
this is not a
I'm
good Paul
interested
W.S.
in that. I
Anderson
thought this
movie.
was fun. It's his horizon.
I give it I'm not gonna go too low though. I'm gonna give it 2 stars, and those 2 stars are merely for he gets 2 stars for attempting to do dark fantasy in 2025. And beyond that, nothing was good about the movie. But it does get 2 stars just for the attempt.